Okay, hello everyone. So welcome to the panel discussion. Hi, my name is Todd Lybrook. I'm with Siemens headquarters in the Pharma vertical. And we've got some real interesting experts to run through a few questions. And also the questions are listed on the actual agenda itself. Before we go into that, I guess what I'd like to do is I want to first briefly introduce who's on the panel. And then we're going to show a quick video of Siemens tech transfer and the future vision of where we're headed, just to kind of help set some of the stage about some of the discussion content. So first of all, we have Brandon Johnson with Engineering USA, Index. And then we have Gary LeDoux from Vericel. And then we have Oleg Grebenyuk from Healthineers. And so we will have each of these panelists give some background information on their successes and challenges through some of their MES projects. But first, as I mentioned, we want to show this quick video. So go ahead and play the video, please.
From the idea to the finished pharmaceutical product, it is a long way throughout the whole organization with many obstacles. Data fragmentation leading to separate data silos, cumbersome processes, slowing down value add creation, lack of knowledge how to capture and share important information between the departments involved. It all costs time. But in the development of pharmaceutical products, every second counts. Let's make them count. Digitalization creates speed. As always, communication is key. The key to a fast and efficient production. Enterprise recipe management helps you communicate digitally via software to directly integrate formulation, laboratory testing, and recipe designers into the production world. Thanks to an easy, scalable digital transformation enabled by Siemens Accelerator. Our software closes the gap between R&D and production, integrates all process data for machine learning in real time, creates a digital backbone for knowledge and data exchange, simplifies the scalability of recipes even for worldwide production, generates a production digital twin for virtual visibility of the future real world to hurdle unforeseeable problems. And most importantly, it helps you win the race against time.
Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted to give you a little a vision of where we're headed on our pharma strategy. And let's go ahead and start some of the questions. So the first question is how organizations approach digital transformation and key challenges and successes encountered along the way. So it's really focusing on the digital transformation challenges and successes. And let's start with Oleg.
Hi, I'm Oleg Grebenyuk. I'm a process engineer from Siemens Healthineers, and I had the privilege to be a team lead on a project where we expand our manufacturing capacity, and that includes a rollout of MES system. What we deployed is Ops Center Pharma MES from Siemens. Obviously, we are a Siemens company, so the choice was clear. And this MES system controls important bulk reagent manufacturing in our facility here in Massachusetts, Walpole, Massachusetts. So answering to your questions, what are the successes and difficulties? I would probably highlight two important things that both success and challenge. First is external to the MES. It's interaction with other software packages. When we deploy our MES, it's integrated up with ERP system, SAP in our case. And it's also integrated with lower level, which in our case is CIMID batch which is our SCADA level software. So getting these layers integrated was a challenge and also a success because it's give us the data flowing through the entire system, fully integrated system. That's one area. The second area was internal to the MES product we are using to the ops center. It came already pre-populated, or not pre-populated, I would say, ready to use for unit of operation, such as material kitting or combination. It has all the capability we want and more for the recipe management. It has equipment management capabilities that exceed our needs, meet and exceed our needs. And that's the benefit. We use it, this off-the-shelf capability. And at the same time, we had other unit of operations that were not native to the ops center. And in order to meet these needs, we integrated, not we, Siemens team, integrated ops center with Siemens batch, and that integrated, intertwined system met all the needs we had on a site.
Thanks, Oleg. So maybe, Brandon, can you comment also on digital transformation, key challenges and successes in some of your customer projects?
Yeah, sure. It's hard to pick. So I work for a global Industry 4.0 integrator, and I've worked with MES and EBR solutions for about 15 years. So there are a lot of successes, thankfully less failures, but a few over many years. I think the key is really to have a clear definition and understanding with all of the stakeholders involved in an MES project, and there are so many because MES touches so many different areas of the business on what exactly you're trying to achieve. So, you know, Oleg mentioned for his project, the integrations were really a key value that they were looking for, and that's often the case, but not always, right? We've seen presentations today at this show from folks who were really focused on, you know, EBR and didn't really necessarily need integrations with external systems from the outset. I would say that's unusual. It's the exception to the rule. More often I see, you know, stakeholders that get very excited at the very beginning of a project and say, we want EBR, we want review and release by exception, and we don't care about all that other stuff. But of course you need the other stuff, right? You need your integrations with, you know, SAP or whatever your ERP system is to make sure that your inventory control is right. You may need integration with equipment to make sure that your data is right, or your automation to make sure your equipment status tracking is right. And understanding what the goals are at the beginning and prioritizing them and making sure that all of the stakeholders who are involved get a say so that you're focused on the right goals is really key to making sure that you end up with a successful project.
Good. So, Gary, what about best practices that can contribute to a successful implementation? So let's really focus on best practices.
Sure, Todd. Yeah, thank you. So Gary LeDoux, I'm a manufacturing systems manager for Vericel. We're in the cell therapy space, located not too far away in Cambridge. I'm overseeing the manufacturing systems for MES and our scheduling system, both Siemens products, Ops Center family. So when it comes to the implementation success, I would, in my past experiences working as a consultant, project manager, program manager, I think the biggest thing that really was a well-developed cutover plan. That's really, I think, what has provided success on a lot of the past implementations that I've worked on. When it comes down to a limited number of hours you have that you're allowed to bring down a system for manufacturing. You have an hour-by-hour detailed level plan that kind of lays everything out, who's doing what, when, and how they're going to do it. A very detailed, structured plan has really served me well in past implementations during that cutover period. So that's probably one of the biggest things I think has yielded that success in my prior MES implementations with past clients.
Okay, great. And so, Oleg, what about best practices that you either brought to the solution or saw being developed during the journey?
So being on a customer side for this project where we deployed the MES, we've right from the beginning decided that we will use built-in capability as is off the shelf whenever it's possible, avoiding any customization as much as possible. We almost succeeded. We had 4 small customizations that we couldn't avoid, but other than that, it's mostly off the shelf and it's working all together. So I think that's significantly simplify validation after it's been deployed. As a person responsible for the validation, I can really relate to that. And another important factor is that the software engineer responsible for the MES and for the semantic badge work side by side throughout the entire project. And that's allowed good integration, and our systems are working together well. That's very important.
Okay. Brandon, what about best practices that maybe you've implemented or do you typically try to deploy?
There are so many. I would say from a recent example, just the project implementation and management methodology that you use makes such a huge difference. We've heard a lot of presentations today from various folks who have been successful implementing projects, and a theme that I've heard has been some sort of agile project methodology. Yeah. I think for MES projects, it's hard to beat an agile methodology, and I think there are a lot of reasons why, but the key reason why is when you start out, you typically have your technical folks. Like I say, I work for a system integrator, so usually I show up, my team shows up on site as the MES experts. And maybe we've done some some pre-sales meetings to understand the process, but we're not really experts on the manufacturing process. We're experts on the software. And the client, of course, they've selected the software that they're implementing by this point, but maybe there were some strong contenders. They're not really experts on the software, but they know their process. And you can have early scoping meetings, build user requirement specifications, even functional specifications. But until the technical team really starts building something and having detailed conversations with the process owners, the process SMEs on the process, they won't really understand the details. And so using an iterative process where you build something, show it, get feedback, improve it, show it again, get feedback, really helps to build knowledge in the technical team on the process. And at the same time, the first time you put a draft version of an electronic batch record in front of the process SMEs, it doesn't matter how long you spoke to them and how well you thought you understood the requirements that they were giving you. They're going to see the system for the first time. They're going to understand, oh, that's how it looks. Actually, it would be better if we did it, like this. And then you can start collaborating, and you can really get into an iterative cycle where both sides are having productive conversations about the best way to meet requirements, both from a technical point of view, given the strengths and constraints of the system, and given the critical points of the process and where the pain points really are for the operations team and the quality teams that are involved in those conversations.
Yeah, agree. Go ahead, Oleg.
From the user standpoint, I shall say it's totally true. Until we see something, it's hard to understand what's coming our way. So all
Yeah.
true, I can confirm.
So one point I'd like to maybe dive into a little bit around best practices, and maybe you guys can just raise your hand as I ask. But from my experiences of being around MES systems and deploying, there are different philosophical methodologies that you can deploy under, instance-based versus class-based, for example. So I found that if you can analyze a customer's needs and understand the products that they make and collapse those electronic batch records and workflows into say a family, like a product family, and then create a class of work instruction that can basically represent that family, that actually saves time, speeds up implementation, saves costs. So do you guys have experience with class-based as well?
Yes, I'm sorry.
You can go ahead.
Okay. Yes, we did implement class-based approach, and that's save a lot of energy and time in creating our recipes, our process instructions. Not as much as we hoped, but still it was a very significant change.
Good. Gary?
Sure, yeah, Todd, same as Oleg. At Vericel, we have that same type of structure with all of our process instructions grouped together in that family for that product line. And that's made things much easier to keep organized and so that they're not so disconnected when we're looking through these instructions and working them through. So that has definitely helped a lot.
And maybe just a side note for those of you that may not know Vericel, a very cool company here in Cambridge. So let's say you have a burn victim that's burned, most of the skin on their body is damaged. As long as they can, in the hospital, carve out like a 2-inch piece square of skin, they can actually take that skin to Vericel, and under personalized medicine, truly each batch is that patient. They can actually delaminate that skin into its layers and then regrow enough skin to place back on the body within, I think it's 14 days, yes, roughly. Yeah. So, I mean, very cool application, also very satisfying project, knowing that you're helping society, so really, really cool company. Brandon, what about some of your experiences with class-based or any other best practice techniques?
Yeah, I think it's important. You can save a lot of effort, as these two have pointed out, but even going one step beyond, looking for similarities in existing batch records, oftentimes we'll start a project, especially with large pharma clients who maybe have grown over acquisition over the years. They'll have a lot of, say, similar batch records that were written by different operators or different authors who maybe used to be part of different organizations, and they're essentially doing the same thing, but in different ways, right, with different, slightly different language, and doing a harmonization exercise at the beginning of an MES project to see how can we simplify the existing batch records to find even more similarities between them, to drive similarities between them, or where can we take complex instructions, excessive instructions that are in the batch records and move them to SOPs, and then maybe link to the SOPs and the work instructions. You can really set yourself up to reduce the complexity of the electronic batch records, the new batch records that you're going to write, so that your electronic versions are much simpler than your paper versions.
And more consistent.
Exactly. So it increases consistency, so it makes it a better user experience at the end. It decreases your effort to go digital, and it also decreases your maintenance effort long term because you don't have so many different versions of the batch records. So it's a good opportunity to do that type of harmonization since you're moving to a new medium anyway.
And to do it up front. And I know from experience that that's exactly what Siemens Healthineers did, is that you actually went through a whole process of normalizing your paper batch records for consistency before you deployed them into an EBR system.
Yes. Actually, we migrated to the standard batch records that
Yes.
UpCenter offered us, and we had one of the necessary modifications, customizations, were in these areas, but we are trying, as I mentioned, stay with a off-the-shelf product. And yes, we have combined everything in a single format for this area of manufacturing.
And then just maybe another follow-on question. I know I heard in some of the presentations today talking about different, again, models of implementation, like core model, reuse model, or something in between. I would like to get your guys' opinion. So I think thinking of building an MES solution as like modular bricks or blocks, doing an object-based approach based upon functional needs, that I think that is a faster, easier way to get to your electronic batch records, thereby, you know, getting to new product introductions faster because you're building your system faster. I just want to get your comment, Brandon, on that. Do you use like a building block approach and kind of a reuse model or a core model? How would you?
Yeah, not always a full building block approach, but there's always some portion of that. It really depends on the size of the implementation and how much commonality there is across different batch records. You know, we're working today with a large client who's, you know, trying to put EBR across, you know, 50, 60 sites worldwide, and they're heavily using, you know, as you described it, building blocks, reusable blocks. I think some keys, because I've seen more and less successful versions of this over the years. When it hasn't worked well is when you've had, say, a single site, and there's some global interest, and there's a goal loosely defined to build something at this first site that will be reusable at other sites, but no real buy-in or direction yet from the other sites, no clear global strategy or team with the authority to encourage these other sites to use the solution. And then what happens is you either you build something that the other sites aren't interested in, or you try to build something that's globally useful and you increase the complexity of what you're trying to build far beyond what's actually required for this local site, and it puts the local sites, the first site's project at risk. What you really need when it does work well is strong global governance and buy-in, and it needs to be, you know, from the business, from IT, from quality. Everybody needs to be in the room and bought into the strategy, and it needs to be I don't say it needs to be strictly enforced where it's you're getting this and you have no choice. Yeah. There can be some flexibility, right? Because every site thinks they're special, right? That they have their own process. Everybody knows this. And
that each site is better than the other site.
Yeah, and frankly, usually they're right, but not to the degree that they think they are, right? They think everything that they do is special. There's usually something small that's different at that site, and you need to give them a little bit of flexibility at the local level to build out something that'll work for them. And also, if you don't give them any flexibility, it's hard to get buy-in, frankly, from those sites. So having a global model or a core model that covers, you know, 80% of the local sites, I'm all for this. Trying to go 100 is usually, I mean, it's a great thought, feasible. But it's usually not feasible.
Agreed.
So you have to have a strong strategy, and you have to have a realistic strategy from the outset.
Yeah, agreed. Gary, any final comments from your side around best practices or tech transfer or anything else you'd like to mention?
Certainly great points by Oleg and Brandon. I think another point regarding tech transfer, where Vericel is undergoing a tech transfer now from our Cambridge facility to a new site in Burlington. And we have a tech transfer team that has representatives from all of our different functional orgs. So we have folks from engineering, validation, QA, manufacturing. Everyone is represented within the organization. So whenever there's a need, That resource can then go right back to that line of business, ask that question, get whatever that is needed in a very timely manner. So there's limited delays. We're able to get that information quickly to the team to continue on the process for our new site.
So some of these best practices like class-based or modular deployment, has that helped in the tech transfer, would you say? Or
Certainly.
helping with tech transfer?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have our manufacturing lead and our QA lead working close together with myself and IT. So we're aligned, and so whenever there's a need for kind of understanding how things are existing in Cambridge, we can understand what has worked well here and what we don't want to bring to Burlington. So that's another big part of it as well.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. Well, those are the questions that we had originally planned. So I think we'll open it up to questions from the audience. I know it's late in the day. Come on. Who's the first? Any other questions or topics that we didn't cover that someone has a question about?
Yes.
We have a hand.
He's a hero in the back.
We heard a lot of things in today. I think some of the areas that we often keep asking about MES is MES EBR? Is MES system of records for everything? Is MES system of record only for EBR? What are your thoughts?
Great question. Brandon?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. In my mind, no, EBR is not MES. EBR is a feature of MES. The reason they get conflated often, I think, is because, not always, but most of the time, when an EBR MES project is started, the stated goal is eventually to get to review and release by exception. This is where the major value is for most clients in MES EBR. There are certainly customers who just want to do paper on glass. Take our paper, put it on the glass. We don't care about review and release by exception. We just don't want to manage the paper anymore. In that case, you have EBR, but you don't have MES.
Agreed.
Right? If you want a manufacturing execution system, you need to have your integrations with your ERP to make sure that your consumptions and declarations of your raw materials and your finished goods are accurate and automated if possible. You need to have some control around your equipment that you're using to make sure that it's in the correct state and that it's released and available when you're using it. You need to have ideally control around your operator. Is the operator who's executing this task actually certified, trained to be able to execute this task? These different assets, control of the equipment, control of the operators, control of your stock, they enhance your electronic batch record. You can add controls around all of the different activities that you take in your electronic batch records to actually improve the quality of the tasks that you're executing and your end product. If you just do paper on glass, it's maybe a little bit easier to manage, but you're not a whole lot better off from a quality point of view than you were when you were using paper. When you have a full MES and you can build in these controls around the activities that you're executing in your EBR, it adds a lot more value.
And maybe one comment real quick around, what are you actually approving, or at what level are you getting approval for? And I think when you're deploying a full MES, you're really approving that level 3 as long as you are having LIMS connected in so that you can get your LIMS data into the batch record for those approvals of the CQAs within range. But then really the final product approval needs to be promoted up to level 4 to your ERP system. And maybe real quick, any comments there, Oleg or Gary?
I just recalled that Ops Center Execution Pharma, formerly known as CIMIT EBR. So it's a common confusion, and me going into this project, being new to all this automation area, I was confused myself between MES and EBR. So yes, EBR is part of the MES if it's deployed together, or it can be paper and glass deployed itself. In our case, EBR is part of the MES. We are executing a release by exception. We don't have as much approvals as many pharma has, so we are at level 3, we're releasing, but it's intermediate, not the final product. The final product is released in a different ways.
Yeah, because you're making diagnostic reagents.
Yes, we are a medical device company. We're making diagnostic reagents.
Okay. Gary, any comments there?
Yeah, I'd also just agree with my colleagues here. Yeah, I see EBR separate as a component of MES, not the full-blown MES at all by any means. At Vericel, we've branded our MES EBR, so that causes confusion internally, unfortunately. But as a lot of other folks have that same notion as well.
Okay, great. Any other questions, comments?
In the front.
I have a comment. We named everything EBR, and in certain unit operations, you don't need a batch record per the regulations, but you want to document what happens, and we're using paper for that. So one of the things that we did was rebrand what we're building, and I think some folks used it earlier in the presentations as digital records. So they're digital records that document manufacturing operations. Some of them are required to be batch records, and some are just other means of documenting in a digital system. So divorcing ourselves from EBR has helped the business unit leaders say, we don't need, a digital way of documenting it. That's the system for batch records. But there's so much more you can do in MES, in your MES system. So we rebranded it. We went through this over the last year so that we can enable more transformation and further and deepening in MES to get rid of paper on our floor. So I just wanted to share that learning. We went through the process of rebranding, and it was so useful. We use PASX, so there's ESPs, there's state diagrams, there's so much more.
And it clarifies the validation and the quality side then.
Exactly. We still go through the formality on some things, but it lessens as you go further away. So, thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's an excuse not to move.
Yeah. I mean, a very simple example is in pharma, a lot of your MES systems are also going to allow you to do electronic equipment logbooks,
Yes.
which is not an EBR, right? It may look just like your EBR because it's using the same solution, but it's not EBR. And if you call it EBR, you're limiting yourself to, maybe not using something that's very useful, that's not EBR, that's also available in the MES software.
And it's non-batch related. Yeah. Or your equipment cleaning cycles. Yeah. Okay, any other comments?
Sir,
Question?
back.
They like to make me run.
We're giving him a workout. We keep going back to front, back to front.
Hi, thanks for taking the questions. In your experience, is there ever a time in a product development lifecycle that's too soon to begin an EBR journey? So, for example, moving from preclinical into clinical, early stage clinical into late stage clinical, and then into preparing for commercialization. Any place in that journey where you feel like the amount of changes that are necessary to continue to keep this EBR code in a state of control are starting to become too burdensome for the overall delivery team to keep up with. And we see it as new products come in. There's maybe there's lots of optimization still happening in the earlier stages of process development.
I'll try to take a stab at it first. It was kind of hard to hear exactly what I think you were asking, but I think it's more about, are you using MES or EBR through the different phases of the life cycle? And I know we have one customer where we're using some of the functionality like in a pilot facility, but prior to the pilot facility, like more in R&D, I would say EBR is probably, or MES is a little heavy. But the earlier that you can digitize and create that recipe, as was shown in the video, the earlier that you can create that recipe, then the faster or the easier the tech transfer will be throughout that life cycle, and then therefore the faster that you can get new product introductions out the door. So I mean, I think that's probably a very high level answer, but maybe Brandon, do you have any other insights into that? I just haven't seen like a strict or a formal MES used much in R&D.
No, I think that's right. I agree with you that at a pilot facility it can make sense, but even there, because you have so many different products for such a short amount of time,
right,
we typically take a different strategy when building out the recipe, the workflow that you'll execute. So, a typical workflow, think of a Visio diagram for a mature commercial product, might be, top to bottom, you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do that, right? For a pre-production facility, for like a pilot plant, we might build something that's more horizontal,
yeah,
where we say, these are all the different unit procedures that you might want to use. Maybe you use some of them, maybe you use all of them, maybe you use some of them multiple times, maybe you don't use any of them more than once. And then we build a lot of flexibility into that process. So we try to build a generic workflow that the operators at the pilot plant can then kind of queue up the operations that make sense for the particular product that they're executing on that given day. And that way we can build something that's reusable and generic enough to work for most products that are used at that pilot plant, so that a new electronic batch record doesn't need to be built, every week or however often you're bringing new products through that plant. And then of course, when you want to commercialize that, you have previously executed batch records from the pilot plant. You can look at which of those blocks were used.
And look at your sequence.
Exactly, and then build something that's a little bit more robust when you go into commercial, but you don't lose the data that you had from the pilot plant. I've seen success with that strategy.
Yeah, but it's only enabled by having like a reusable block or brick approach that's a small functional piece, maybe tied to a unit procedure or unit operation, where then you just loop back up to the top, and then what do you want to do next? And you loop back up to the top, what do you want to do next? And so on. Was that close to answering your question?
Yeah, I think it is very much on track. I think the sweet spot for us is to try to figure out when we're starting at, we're in the clinic, and we start to think about how do I optimize the change management burden,
Yeah.
electronic systems and validation relative to the paper process.
Right.
So it can be a bit heavy and a bit slower to
Well, and if you also think about your reusable blocks as like pre-validated, or you validate the block, then that means now it's a validated function. So you can execute that in whatever sequence, but it's still a validated block of function. So therefore, I think it gives you the most flexibility to figure out, as Brandon stated, I don't know what I want to do, but I kind of know in general, but I don't have it all plotted out. But then after some success, then you can go back in history and say, oh, well, this executed batch record gave me the best results, so let's model this flow into maybe the next scale-up facility or maybe full scale and start from there. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, any others? Okay.
That's it then. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for
All
the
right.
very good
Thank you.
discussion.